Yep, I am back in the garage. If you look behind me, I've got a job site table saw. There's a chainsaw up there. There's also a compound miter. If you were to look around here a bit, you're going to see I've got a brush mower and a compressor. But the main thing that I want to talk about isn't the fact that I have tools, because I've had several versions of many of these. I think I've had 3 table saws. I've had 3 compound miters, a couple different routers, 4 chainsaws. Throughout the years, I've been able to upgrade quite a bit. And then now I'm kind of downscaling some. The chainsaw I own now is a little bit smaller, but then again, I'm older. I like something lighter. But the object of me talking about tools is pretty simple, and that is that God does in our lives what people did for me in showing me how to get good at doing carpentry or plumbing or electrical. God teaches us. God uses our circumstances in life. He brings key people our way, and God teaches us to use tools. And so this story, which also is about Elijah, is talking a little bit about how God is there for us, in this case, through the prophet Elisha, even when using the tools, maybe it doesn't go as effectively as we'd like. So have you ever been in a place where there's something that needs to be done, some work that needs to be done, but like you have zero experience? And so now you're forced to tackle something that is really, really unfamiliar to you, and you have no choice. Quite a few years ago, Bonnie and I bought a house, and in the back of the house was this huge deck, and it was beautiful. But one corner of the deck, I noticed up against the house, the deck boards were kind of curled and going up. I mean, there was this kind of a big dip there, and so I thought, well, I can handle that. I can replace deck boards, right? So I had a Saturday, and I proceeded with the screw gun to remove sections of the deck boards. And when I looked underneath, what I saw was a dryer vent up against the rim joist, up against the house, okay, partially crushed. And it was almost like they'd taken a chainsaw and they cut the main support board from the side and the joist. And so literally there was a joist that was on one end of the deck, and it was fastened, but coming all the way here, it would have been right in the middle of the dryer vent. So they just cut it off. And so it's kind of like, it's like, we want you to walk this board. Right now we have 2 guys holding it, but now the guy on the other end, as you start walking, he's just going to drop his end of the board. Okay, so what's going to happen? The board's going to fall. Well, there's nothing holding it up, so that's exactly what it did. I had deck boards curled up, so you know what I did? I called a carpenter friend, and I said, what's the best way to fix this? Well, some of it included, he said, we got to do something about that dryer vent. So you're going to have to cut some holes, and it's really short, so you should be able to duck that going out the side of the deck because it's a real short run. So this project that I thought was going to take me like all of like a half hour took me 6 hours to get done, plus 2 trips to the hardware store. So sometimes when you get into something and it's new to you, you don't have experience. But that's not a bad thing, because those are the times that you learn, and those are also the times when you can tap the experience of others. It's not a bad thing. From time to time, God asks us to do things in His kingdom, in His economy, stuff that isn't normally in our wheelhouse, and we can get really uncomfortable about that. That's kind of the case with this next text, which is talking about Elisha, and he has this group of prophets, kind of a school of the prophets, if you will, and they needed to do something, and it involved prophets who are more inclined to be getting into the scriptures to stretch themselves a little bit. It involved them doing something that lumberjacks would do. Now, most lumberjacks would say that's a baby lumberjack tool. It's a hatchet, but it's the closest thing that I had access to a real full-blown axe.
But yeah, these prophets, they needed to behave like lumberjacks, and they were going to do something together, and that was to gather poles so that they could build a new meeting place. So when you're jumping into the unfamiliar, it's good to know that God's got your back. So if things go sideways, you shouldn't actually avoid unfamiliar tasks because God's there for you. That's the case when the prophets try to be lumberjacks. Begin at 2 Kings 6, 1 and 2. The company of the prophets said to Elisha, "Look, the place where we meet with you is too small for us. Let us go to Jordan, where each of us can get a pole, and let us build a place for us to meet." And he said, "Go." Now, some decisions in life are pretty basic. For example, if you are dieting and you are exercising and you lose weight and you discover that if you didn't tighten your belt a lot, that your pants would fall to the floor. You probably don't have to get up and during your morning devotion time pray and ask God, "Lord, is it your will that I should buy pants with a smaller waistline?" You understand? There are just some times that it just makes sense that, yeah, just go out and buy pants that are smaller, okay? So there are some needs that we have that are individual needs, and there are some needs that we share together with others. But in either case, it just is common sense. And for these guys, notice that the prophets, they didn't gather together and say, "Hey, Rudy over there, he's a great carpenter. So let's all get lawn chairs together, give Rudy the tools, and let's watch Rudy work." No, they decided to do it together. So the best ideas do what? They make sense. It's not a hard sell to get people to support it, and people will help get it done. It wasn't a hard sell for Elisha. He just looked at the whole thing and said, "Do it." Picking up at verse 3. Then one of them said, "Won't you please come with your servants?" "I will," Elisha replied. And he went with them, and they went to the Jordan and began to cut down trees. Now, there's nothing better than an opportunity to impress your teacher by building a bigger classroom. The students wanted their teacher to join them, so Elisha joins the prophets in their woodcutting excursion. Picking up at verse 5. As one of them was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water. "Oh no, my lord," he cried out, "it was borrowed." Now, it should go without saying that if you have to borrow an axe for the project, you probably don't use an axe very often. So you might not pay attention if the axe head is getting a bit loose on the handle. So this prophet, he didn't see the problem coming. And when the axe head flew off the handle, it went straight for the river. Now, maybe some of you golfers out there may notice that golf balls are very attached to water. Your worst hook or slice happens when water is nearby, when there's a group of people watching, and you just took a new golf ball out of the bag. In any case, for this prophet, the work had stopped. He had an audience for his debacle. That was bad enough. But worse yet, he had borrowed the tool. Now, Elisha, he's there. He's got his lawn chair pulled up. He's invited to watch the work. And when the axe head flies into the river, I'm thinking that Elisha just had this little wry smile that kind of swept across his face. And if this was a redneck prophet, this would have been the classic hold my beer and watch this event, okay? And now for this guy, there's simply just a bit of embarrassment and stress. What's he going to do? So picking up verses 6 and 7, the man of God asked, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it there and made the iron float. "Lift it out," he said. Then the man reached out his hand and took it. Now, if you notice something about this, Elisha was very kind. He asked where the axe head went into the water. And in this, not once, didn't berate the man for not fixing the loose axe head. He didn't mock the man for his lack of skill. He helped the man. Are you catching that? What do you do when people are helping in tasks? I've had a lot of church groups come together, and I would say I've definitely seen a few of those redneck moments of hold my beer and watch this. People that really aren't good at something, but they're giving it all the gusto. I mean, they're all in, and they're trying to do their best to help. And things break. Bad things happen. At least, nobody wound up in the clinic or the hospital. But there are times when you're trying to help, and axe heads go flying into the river. Well, axe heads don't float, and neither do golf balls. But you see, God is not limited by our lack of skill, nor will God mock us when we make mistakes. Whatever kingdom stuff that we're working on, God has our back. When our metaphoric axe head goes flying into the river, God is able to recover our loss. And we can afford to be brave on some of the stuff that are really challenging to us, things that maybe we are a little hesitant to try. So what's the moral of this story? Well, in your spiritual life, when it comes to what God's calling you to do, sometimes we make spiritual life so heavenly it's no earthly good. We don't tie God's work to all the practical things. If you read the Sermon on the Mount out of Matthew, chapter 5, 6, 7, you get into those chapters and you read what Jesus taught. Our faith plays out in very practical ways. And it plays out in how we love each other, how we help each other, how we are there for each other, our relationships. The moral of the story is what? Step out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to do practical stuff. Bonnie and I have stepped in to a lot of places where our skill level was stretched, and we're still alive today. You'll survive. Don't fear failure. Fear passivity. Get out and do, because you and I were not created to collect dust. We were created to create, to surrender to a divine purpose found only in Jesus. Ask God to help you build something. And that might be building up your neighbor. It might be encouraging somebody. That's building. And don't worry, if necessary, God can make your axe head float. God is there for you. And why? Because God wants you to thrive.
Have you ever helped with something that was out of your comfort zone? How did it go? What did you learn? Is there anything God has been teaching you lately? What is it? What hit you from today's Bible reading? Thanks for watching. If you'd like to enjoy more by the Vineyard Church, like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/The Vineyard Church Iron Range. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Vineyard Church Iron Range. Or visit our website, www.ironrangevineyard.org. Lastly, subscribe to our e-newsletter to stay connected. Do so by visiting our website and clicking subscribe to our e-newsletter on the homepage.